when I was 7 years old was my first actual concussion. I come off a wave there, it was a big one, went over backwards and I hit my head on the reef. You know, you've got an opportunity here to conquer your fear. Are you going to let this wave beat you down, or are you going to stand back up and go out there?
10th of December 2015.
I got the game wrong. I felt like I had the life knocked out of me. There was a 10-wave set that all broke in that same spot, and now I was just in the impact zone. I basically have like a really strong fight response, which keeps me alive in this moment, right? And gets me back to the land. I started to lose like my ability to move and speak and see, and the doctors were like, we don't know, 5 to 10 years.
5 to 10 year recovery period.
Yeah, they said they didn't know. And that's when I felt the full fear of like, what's my future hold? I was pretty real.
Well, this is an episode we've been trying to pull together for some time. This man has done a phenomenal job on the World Surf Tour for many a year. He is an Olympic bronze medalist, which I can't wait to talk to him about. He is a father, he is a husband, and he is an author of an absolutely magnificent book, Owen Wright Against the Water. Read this book. I don't care whether you like surfing or not. Read this book because it is something I couldn't put down. He's also been sponsored by RipCurl since he was 12, which is every kid's dream. Oh, we've been trying to do this for a while. Welcome to the Howie Games, mate.
Thanks for having us.
I just said to you before, which I say to every guest, if there's anything that I ask or anything you say and you're not sure about it, and you're telling me that there's certain events in your life, and we'll get to them, that are not easy for you to speak about. So I appreciate you coming in. How are you feeling about the process?
Yeah, I guess that's the process is for me starting to talk about it, and part of that process is bringing the book out. And I nearly always get anxiety about talking about these events, but sharing it is also healing for me, and I think sharing it, I've just seen so many positive responses out of people around me too. So
anxiety because it was such a traumatic event in your life?
100%, yeah. It usually almost brings up that same feeling, that same emotion that I went through when I was there in those places. So, and I guess that's the way I talk too. So I really kind of take myself there.
And how hard was it for the book? Is, as I said, I emailed you and I thought I'll just have a quick glance through O's book last week and then I'll spend some more time. And 4 hours later, mate, you cost me half a day. I couldn't put it down. It's a brilliant book. What was it like putting it onto paper? I imagine there were some difficult times involved in going as deep as you did.
Yeah, for sure. Like lots of tears and self-reflection and kind of figuring out the way, once I pieced it all together, it was kind of like, oh, wow, like starting to figure out the way I am now and the events that happen, I could start to figure them all out. But going to those places, it was just like all the emotions were coming out whilst doing it. It was really hard to get it out. But getting it out was also rewarding because I figured a lot of things out about myself as well along the way. And then, getting to this stage now where sharing it is, a new level of like nervousness, but also excitement because it's something I've worked on for a little while now.
So let's start at the start of your journey. Tell me where you grew up. You're from a big family. You're from a big family that obviously were right near the water a lot of the time.
Yep. So I've got four other brothers and sisters.
Yep.
And so 5 of us all together.
Yep. And they all surf at a high level.
All surf at a high level and still at a high level.
Yep.
Tyler.
Well, I was watching her at J-Babe 3 days ago.
She's the most well-known one, which is the 2 world titles.
Yep.
And so she's, just absolute trailblazer. Won her first CT event at 14, like youngest girl ever. Like if you look at that now and they're
14.
talking about like young girls like Caitlin Simmers and things like that getting their first win, but that like 17 or 18, whereas Tyler was 14.
It's frightening. So if people listening that don't understand surfing, she's competing against fully fledged professional women. We're not talking about the under 16 world titles.
We're talking about Lane Beachley.
Yeah, right.
In her prime.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
In the Lane Beachley Pro.
Right.
Like.
And that was her first win.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So she's just like insane. And then you've got my little brother Mikey. He's not so little anymore, but he kind of trailblazed in qualifying through like wildcard positions. And just crazy good surfing and made the tour that way. And then my older brother, he was a keen as surfer and still is great surfer. And then my sister Kirby, she was on the qualifying series, surfed incredibly well as well. So all of us mad keen surfers.
And where'd you grow up?
We grew up in Culburra Beach.
Right, which is where, for those that don't know?
It's about 2.5 hours south of Sydney, just east of Nowra. It's in the Shoalhaven.
What's your first memory of surfing?
My first memory of surfing would have to be like on a foamy. This is probably the earliest. On a foamy, we were down in Narooma. We had a little holiday place down in Narooma.
Yep.
And it was out in the hills, and we would drive down to the ocean, and it was just like this piece of foam that I would just get on and try and surf. And it was pretty cold down there, but.
Mate, come on. You're in Melbourne now. I live in Barwon. Don't be giving me the cold.
True.
And was there? Do you have any? Like, if I ask you about those early times, what's your initial thought? Is there fear of the surf? Is there love of the surf? Is it abandon? Is it joy? Is it terror? Is it adrenaline? What is it? What's the first thought that comes to your mind of that when you're first starting to learn to surf?
Yeah, for me, it was definitely love.
Love.
Yeah, like just
Love
joy.
of what?
I think it was almost like, if I look at it, it was kind of early on, just like our expression, like it was just that pure joy of like just moving and trying to be good at it, I guess. Like,
Your father was a surfer?
father was a surfer, yeah.
So he was the main influence?
So he was surfing, and then we had this like really nuts town. We had like a Laurie Byrne, who was a shaper, but also also Australian champion in the Masters. And so then I had my dad, who was really keen, and then we had the Cheadles, who were like the local surf shop owners, and one of their sons surfed incredibly well as well. And so it was kind of like this like really like great place to, become pro.
So everyone's pushing everyone.
Everyone was pushing everyone and feeding off everyone. So I can't remember a time when surfing was like not like the only thing that existed.
Really?
It was just like, that's where I'm going.
That was the forefront. That was always the plan. The first thing that grabbed me in your book when you're talking about your father, Rob, that he used an expression with you, and I've written it down, lean into fear. And I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. So explain what that meant to you as a kid. How old were you when your dad's telling you to lean into fear?
Yeah, so this is like 7 years old, right? So a year older than my son, Varley.
It's reasonably early to lean into fear.
I know, right? So, but the ticket was, right, is like we had the ultimate goal of like trying to get barreled in Indonesia, where dad would go for his like boys trips.
This is your goal in life.
This at that age, it was like, we want to go to Bali, and
so he'd go on these trips with his mates?
Yeah, he'd go on his trips with his mates, come back and show you some grainy footage of like some perfect barreling left or whatever. And
that just invaded your mind?
Yeah. And I think just seeing my dad's joy, it like just impacted like us as kids of like, that must be the thing, like if like dad would come home and he'd just be the happiest he's ever been, because he's just like, gleaming with all the stories and this and that. And so like, for us, we're just idolizing what he's saying right there. And so leaning into fear came out of that, because to get to that place, we had to surf Aussie Pipe. And that was like this barreling left over shallow reef with urchins and barnacles and the rest of it, not too far from our house. And it was like the feared wave. And at 7 years old, like there's not a hell of a lot of surfers that are gonna,
No, there's not. For anyone that's been to Aussie Pipe, it's not your typical 7-year-old style of operation.
No. So that's where it was like, hey, well, if you want to get there, you've got to go here, and to do that, you've got to conquer your fear, and you got to lean into that. And it was like, leaning into that was like breaking it down. Like, okay, look at that surfer. Can you go along the wave like he can? Yeah, I can do that. Like, and so I was 7 years old. I was learning from my dad to watch other surfers and ask yourself the question, can you do that? Or can you do that? Can you perform like that on that wave? And most of the time it was like, well, yeah, I can. but what was stopping was the fear of being able to do that. And so at 7 years old, that was kind of breaking that down and kept pushing those boundaries. So we were getting barreled at Aussie pipe like from then on.
That disciplined approach,
Mm.
positive or negative for you?
Look,
A bit of both.
I think a bit of both.
Yep.
Yeah, like, and I think the positive came later on as I grew up, and the negative was whilst I was 18, 19, just like,
You want to explore the world, and
yeah, like, come on, man, like, why can't we go and stay in this nice hotel or this and that? Well, maybe even like 14, I was already questioning that.
Yep.
But yeah, like, his discipline and I guess driven nature was across many different forms. Like we would be training at 4:30 in the morning, and up in the cold, and the cold was
every morning.
Yeah, most mornings. Yeah.
What was
yeah.
the training at 4:30?
So we would be doing like we called it a lao ma. So you'd be standing with in a low squat with your arms up in the air for 20 minutes.
So what are you doing? Show me.
So you'd be standing with your legs wide, with your arms up in the air like this for 20 minutes.
It's a quad burner.
Yeah, man. It's a mental challenge.
Okay.
Yeah. So you get hot, you get sweaty, your breath comes out, and so you got to learn to control your breath.
This is when you were a kid, yeah?
Yeah, when you were a kid. So
right.
Yeah, and so I mean, we were doing things like that. We were doing Tai Chi. We were doing all kinds of different fitness from early in the morning. If you were pushing your place to all your body and mind was saying was no, then that was the place that you were supposed to go. So like and until you got there and you're like, yeah, I'm here and I'm comfortable. That was when you're in the books with Dad, where you're like, yeah, you've pushed yourself to these uncomfortable places and you've mastered your own mind. You're no longer just like, like head down and like dragging yourself along. You're there and you're like, yeah, and you're mentally ready for it. So.
And what do you learn from that? Learning to be able to push through and achieve an equilibrium at age 8, 10, 12. Like, what do you learn as a kid from that, do you think, that's still with you now?
I think that's what got me through some of the harder things later on in life.
Yep.
I know that's what got me through the things later on in life. At the time, and then coming up to 16, 17, 18, it's like you question all that. You're like, why do I have to do all this? And so can be down the road and, having beers or having meat pies and, eating whatever they want, or, not getting up at 5 o'clock or 4:30 to train, and they're still getting good results.
Yeah,
like,
okay.
Why do you? So you have all those questions later on. So there's like, but like that was my life, and it perfectly prepared me for what was going to happen later on. So I'd have to say I learned how to be uncomfortable. I learned how to take myself to places that I don't necessarily you don't necessarily want to be in, but going there you get strength out of.
So it's full commitment.
Yeah.
Then you get to your feet, a big pipe barrel.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's a very surf-specific question, so for the others that are listening,
Mm-hmm.
that don't dream about these things, knowing they can't achieve, well, what's it like when you're standing in it?
Yeah, so I guess that is full commitment before that wave gets there. Like usually, say for instance at a wave, if I was in a heat, I'm going that wave before that even gets there. Like there's no question about it. But in the free surf lineup at Pipe, there's so many locals, there's the rest of it to deal with. You're kind of watching. I'm watching other people to see and scan who's paddling for the horizon, who's not, how can I outposition. So that's a bit of a trickier circumstance there at that stage. But if you can finally see that moment and gap in time where someone's not fully committed or someone's committed but you can tell they're just not in that right spot, then it's like that's the ones that I'd pick off. And I guess when you're dropping down that face, that's kind of the thrill right there, is because you've done all this work to like get into this wave, and the drop is usually the part where you're like, heart goes into your throat. You're kind of like, here we go. That's that moment where you kind of that edge that you bring yourself to, and then once you've made that drop, that's when you kind of feel this like, well, for me, a bit more relaxation, like, oh, here we go, like in the barrel, and time stands still a bit.
And is it like as majestic and awe-inspiring as people talk about, or is it just bang?
I think for some, like for me, I felt like a bit of peace in there. You know what I mean? Like there's all this like like I've explained in that like lead up there, there's all these like hurdles that you're getting over, fear and whatnot to get to that point. So once I'm in that barrel and standing there, time slows down and I get a bit of like my shoulders drop. I relax. I've got a few photos out there where it's like my shoulders are just hanging way down. I'm kind of almost look a bit sleepy in there. Like it's just really, really enjoyable. But I definitely know there's some times where it's like you're kind of like really crouched and you can see more of a fear position where you're locked and loaded and just really trying to gun for that exit. So just depending on the wave and how deep you are. Yeah.
When was the first time? I've written it down here.
Mm-hmm.
October 2009, you perforated your eardrum.
Mm-hmm.
Is that, because of where we're obviously going to end up in this conversation, is that the first time you've taken a knock to the head surfing, or have you had a few to this point?
Yeah, so I've definitely had a few to that point. That was the first one that was in competition. I was in the I think it was the search event at Portugal. The first year we went there, and I got a wild card because I was doing so well on the QS.
So QS qualifying series to
yeah.
lead into the main.
Yeah.
For those that are not aware, into the main World Surf Tour.
And I guess I get that. I had that spot, but I earned that spot through outperforming other RipCurl riders of my age and whatnot. And RipCurl had the search event, and so they award me with the wild card and whatnot to get into that event and test my skills out.
Yep.
But yeah, that was the first one that I had in an event, which at the time was just diagnosed as a blown eardrum, but I was completely knocked out.
So you fell?
Yeah, I fell off at the takeoff, and I just remember not remembering anything till I was on the beach.
Right.
Yeah.
That's frightening.
Yeah. But I had other physical injuries at the time that the concussion got overlooked.
But it wasn't so. This is 2009. Our views and understanding of concussion in the footy field where I work, or even in cricket now, in any sport, was a lot different in 2009 to the way it is in 2023.
Yeah, way different. It's concussion in surfing. It didn't really exist. It was kind of like
it was a wipeout.
Take a wipeout, and it was a bad wipeout, and you just get up and dust yourself off, and off you go again. It's probably the same in most sports, right?
Absolutely.
Like it was like, oh, I've got a bad hit up, or that was a bad mark, and I just kind of got knocked out there, but now I'm back up and going again.
So you don't remember from the incident to them being on the beach?
That's right.
Did you get to the beach under your own steam? Who knows?
I don't know. I don't know how many waves or whatever, and still don't know to this day.
Wow.
But, it wasn't my first, and it kind of goes back to even surfing Aussie Pipe was my first actual concussion. When I was 7 years old, I come off a wave there. It was a big one. And I came off a wave, and I went over backwards, and I hit my head on the reef, and I lost a chunk of my ear, and I still have a chunk of my ear missing to this day. And I got knocked out, and my brother pulled me up the beach, and I was like coughing up water, and I was like delirious and just completely like dizzy.
That's at age 7.
And that was at age 7. And so I learnt something back then that was just kind of key in my whole makeup, which was like I now had a serious wipeout at a wave. I had blood pouring out of my ear, and I now had a serious wipeout. My dad was out surfing. He came in, and it was like, you've got an opportunity here to conquer your fear. Are you going to let this wave beat you down, or are you going to stand back up and go out there? And so 7 years old, blood pouring out of my ear, it was like I took a bit of time to gather, and I went back out and surfed that day.
10th of December 2015. We mentioned at the start that you have some anxiety talking about this, so I'd rather listen than ask too many questions.
Mm-hmm.
What happened that day? You've explained Pipe to me. You've explained what you need to do to succeed at Pipe. What happened that day?
I did. I got the game wrong. I had a lot of confidence. Probably just not registering fear at all at that stage. I was really confident. I went straight to the deep spot in the lineup, and I remember the first wave that came through that day, and I was like probably 10, 15 meters deeper than the next guy, way up the point. The swell was super west, and yeah, I got one of the best waves of the morning. It was huge, it was giant. There was so much like big swell seconds, so it was holding all the water onto the reef. I came out of that barrel, and I was just like, I just felt all those good things. Like it's looking good.
You're sounding invincible from your description to this
Yeah,
point.
I'm in the world title race at the time as well. And like if I do well at pipe, then I've got a real shot at winning the title. So it was kind of like practice for that and out there. So that wave was like a real good notch under my belt. So I paddle back out. I paddle straight back to that deep spot, deeper than everyone else, and then this giant second reef wave that should have probably broke on third reef out further again. These waves where I say they pop up or they break or don't break. It didn't break all the way until like came all the way into the second reef, and everyone was bailing their boards and diving to the bottom. And I just had so much confidence that I just decided to duck dive. And
So for those following, so bailing, people are jumping off their board, they're swimming as deep as they can, they're letting their surfboard go.
yeah, they're getting like 3-4 meters underneath by diving.
And a duck dive, you lean to the front of your board, you press your leg up, and you try and sort of scoot out under the wave. Yeah.
Yeah,
And so you're probably going not even a meter under the water.
Half a meter
Half a
tops
metre.
with a 7-foot board.
Yep.
You're not getting it down very deep.
So you're trying to duck dive it.
Yeah, and I get probably half a meter under, and this wave just absolutely detonates me on top of me.
So the wave landed on you per se. It pretty much broke on you.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, and
How big a wave are we talking?
geez, I think it was every bit of like 12 feet.
Okay.
Plus.
So an enormous wave.
It was
A couple of stories high.
Yeah, it was the biggest wave that I've had land on me at pipe by far. The swell size, the tide, everything was just the water in it was just like relentless that morning. And then, yeah, I guess this is the part that's always brings up a bit of anxieties because it's like not super clear the next part, but like I had a lot of people out in the water to tell me, like I was, just I'd resurfaced after that wave, but like, probably like from my friends around me, they said, oh, I resurfaced, but I was like 50 meters in and resurfaced way later than everyone else. I can talk about my feeling and I've got flashbacks and things and that, but I felt like I had the life knocked out of me when that wave landed on me. And I was still out the back. I was still way out the back. There was a 10 wave set that all broke in that same spot. And now I was just in the impact zone, copping 10 footers, 12 footers, wave after wave.
Are you bailing off your board trying to swim under at this point? You don't know.
From what I said, the waves are just like flashbacks. Waves are just hitting me. I wasn't even diving or nothing. I was just,
Jeez.
I was like in that flight response, so to speak, where I was just trying to survive. And I remember, I feel the feeling. I've got the flashbacks. Everyone, but I basically have like a really strong flight response, which keeps me alive in this moment, right, and gets me back to the land. I get back to land and I get up to the RipCurl house and I'm kind of like, I'm slurring my words a little bit. I try to eat, but I can't I can't chew properly, and like food, it was weird. Like my sister was like, dude, it was so weird. Like you couldn't eat, and then you were slurring your words, and you kept just talking about how flogged you got.
This is Tyler.
Tyler was, yeah, and I know the feeling, and I got the flashbacks, but it's just, it's the moment that then when I laid down in bed, like I just gave up on like that morning. It was just like, oh, super weird. Went downstairs, laid in bed, and then this is the part where where I started to lose like my ability to move and speak and see, and things were like just I was going out, but I didn't know why, and the panic of that is just like, and it was just so big. Like I was just starting to panic, and my friends found me, and like it was pretty bad at that stage. I was trying to speak, but I couldn't speak. And I just remember this feeling of like, I'm here, but I can't action it. I can't get out. And so that's where I was, man. It was just like this scary place. And then that's when it all kind of doctors come round, and I guess that's from where the accident happened out at Pipe, and that time, that was when the adrenaline was starting to wear off and the swelling was still going in the brain.
So there's concussion. You explained it really well in Against the Water.
Yeah.
There's concussion, and then there's what you described, which I then went and read about, a TBI,
Yeah.
traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
Explain to me what that is and what it was doing to you, if you're
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, I can. So concussion is like 3 levels. You got mild, moderate, and severe. So I was at a severe concussion state at that stage where there was just lots of swelling on the brain. And then mine stepped over into a TBI because then I had a minor bleed, which is a minor TBI, but a minor TBI is like 5 to 10 years, or it's like a seriously long time to recover from it. It steps a severe concussion is 12 months, or like less, like 6 months, 12 months, and then mine goes to TBI, which is like long term. So it's like changes to your brain, and like, yeah. And so, we went off to hospital and the rest of it, and then that was when they said, oh, like, you've got a TBI.
What does that mean to you? Nothing?
It meant nothing. But the doctors were like, we don't know. You're 5, 10 years. We don't know where this sits. There was no positive
5 to 10 year recovery period.
Yeah, they said they didn't know. They were just, because it stepped over into that another level past concussion.
What's that like to hear that?
Of panic, mate. Absolute panic. I was like, I've got to get out of here. I don't like hearing this. And I was, all reports. I still feel that panic of like, I've got to change where I am. I can't stay here. I need to get out of here.
So you left the hospital?
Just got out of the hospital. Yeah.
You described out of hospital when you went downhill really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
That was the part of the book that I honestly I read those 5 pages 4 times
to
try and understand what you were talking about.
Yeah. I got out of hospital. I was in a wheelchair. I had like blacked out eye goggles on. I could barely move. I couldn't walk. So I was like getting carried to the car. And so I was just like adamant to leave this hospital. I don't even know how I got out. Like, it's such a wild time, but I was just adamant, man. Like, this is like the panic that I must have been feeling inside. Like, I still feel it. It's like, I just wanted to get out of there. And I got out, and it just got so much worse. Like, obviously the stimulation, the people, everyone coming in. Wasn't long after that I was back in hospital because I'd had like another extremely like intense episode, which had like just caused me to just go like out again. Like, I had to go back to the hospital, back in the ambulance.
What happened?
So, I still find it hard to explain, and this would be the first. It's in my book, but it's the first time I've spoken it. But I lost control of my body again, and the same panic, and I was going out. It was just an overwhelming scenario, and I don't know exactly what happened, but I went somewhere else. It was colorful. It was, it was what I feel like to this day, and it holds true. I felt like I went somewhere else, and I had a decision to either come back or stay away. And I'm still here now, but
Why'd you come back?
I the track when I got back was so incredibly hard, but when I was there, I remember coming back for the people around me, and I remember my sister and my family, and my girl at the time, and Keita was my now wife. So there was this like, it was not spoken word, but it was like all these emotions, and it was so incredibly colorful. Like, it was weird. And I remember it clear as day. And my penny didn't drop until probably 4 months in. And that's when I felt like the full weight of the situation and how hard it was, because I fully understood that I was not well, and I can hear the emotion come up in my voice now. That was the hardest moment, was when I grasped that I was like for all purposes, just fucked.
I think you'd say it, mate. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely fucked.
Yeah, I was fucked. And that's when I felt the full fear of like, what's my fucking future hold? Well, I was pretty ruined.
The 10th of December 2015, do you stand on a surfboard for the first time?
I'm not too sure of the exact time, and it will be in my book because I would have recalled it.
Yeah, I think
well.
you did ish.
Yeah, it would have probably been an ish in there as well.
Yeah.
But my dad come to get me, and geez, emotion comes up, but
You're right, mate. Take your time.
I had to face a big fear, getting back in the water.
So what did he say?
Him along with the neurologist says it's time. You got to get back to the ocean.
And what was that message like to hear?
It was tough, but I knew it was time.
So at this stage, so we've come the full circle, mate.
Mm.
A chance to take a breath. So at this stage, we've learned about leaning into fear. As
Yeah.
a 7-year-old. Now you're a grown man.
Yeah.
And you've learnt what there is to be fearful about.
Yeah.
How do you feel about leaning into the fear now?
Well, it scared the shit out of me.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Understandably, mate.
Take me back in there, I tell you. But I had to face it. I knew I did. It was the only way I was going to get my life back. I'm thankful that I had him there because he took me into it. But it was not any easier.
But he was there with you?
He was there. The first duck dive, had this God Almighty cramp in my chest.
Did you?
And it was anxiety.
Anxiety, yeah.
Yeah, struck it.
And I presume we're not talking 10-foot waves here at this point either.
Nah, it's just 2 foot, mate.
Right.
So it's 2 foot. And yeah, it strikes deep, man. The knot in my chest, the pain. And it was just all anxiety. The fear was gripping.
When you said you had to do it to regain your life, what do you think life would have been if you didn't do it?
I think that's part of the fear, man. It could have gone either way at this point. And if it wasn't for my dad and the neurologist, the context, I was even living in the bush. You get my bit of time, but I was living in the bush. The fear was so big that it was like, I'm never going back to the ocean.
That's it.
That was it.
And this is people. We've heard your story about your connection with the ocean.
Yeah.
Forever and a day. You are the ocean, and the ocean is you in many ways.
Yeah.
So you're done.
My house was half an hour from the beach, in the middle of the bush. I had to cross 2 creeks to get to it.
For that reason.
Wow. And yeah, the neurologist, and they had to wait their time to tell me until I clicked back in to tell me that you got to get back to the ocean. And and I guess that's the part where I, looking back and can know those emotions there now. They're still there, and that's why I found the book so hard to get out. But
I bet, mate.
I got back to the ocean. I had the cramp, and come back to the childhood, back to Aussie Pipe. You got the chance. It's now.
Lean into it.
Fuck. And so I got my first wave, and I could surf. So all those things, that corner that I'd turned was so big. Reality had sunk back in, and so surfing had come back in. I could access the things that were me. So it was a tough time, but a special time.
I don't really know. I'm really lost for words. I'm lost for words. So your first event back at Snapper.
Yeah.
And this is where Mick's talking about the start of the sporting comeback.
Yeah.
Well, let's not keep people in suspense. You won it.
I won it, yeah.
How the hell did you win it?
I don't know. I still scratch my head to this day. I was very simple. had a great coach, Glenn Micro Hall, who he put the time into understanding my brain. Obviously, my dad, my support, Keita, my family, RipCurl, far out, man. Like they rolled out the carpet. Claw himself gave me his personal unit at Snapper Rocks.
That's the man that formed RipCurl we're talking about.
Yeah,
now.
like I was looked after, man, like so well, and the support I had was incredible, and it basically let me rock up to that comp, like with headphones on, with no music in them, with the blindfolds on, put a rash shirt on, get spoken 2 words to my coach at the time, which was stay on your feet, a few words, stay on your feet, and that's the simplicity of all I could pretty much take at that time. Like I'd barely surfed 2 times a week, let alone heats in a day. But the neurologist and my family was super nervous about this. And I don't think they all agreed. But my neurologist was assured that this was the way to get my life back. This was about regaining life. It wasn't about winning a world tour event and going to number 1 in the world in your very first event back. It was about doing an event, pulling you out, and letting you recover.
But you did win it.
But I won, and I don't know how. It's like all these pathways were just there waiting to be unlocked. And heat by heat, it just kept unlocking. And yeah, I won. I still am shocked by it. It's like...
Well, when I said I went through it on YouTube, that was my favourite part, watching
Yeah.
the final versus Wilco. And again, like your book, I thought I'll just whip through here. You cost me a lot of time because I watched the whole thing. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And to see you up the beach, but you sort of, you move forward, and you talked about having to sleep sitting up. So you put your vest back on, or like you paddle back out at pipe for the first time.
Yeah.
Does the first wave come and you just go, or no?
It doesn't go according to plan, man. I'm out there, but I'm like, I can barely move my neck, man. I haven't slept for weeks, and I can barely move. It's like I've got probably a few degrees to either side of my neck. Can't look up, which is impacting everything. But I knew I needed to be out there, and I just kind of freeze up, man. I get like a couple small points, maybe 2 and a 3.
So this is in competition. People don't understand now.
In competition, this is like, I'm coming 5th in the world at this stage. Yeah, first year back. So I would have loved to have made. All I had to do is make one heat at pipe, and I would have been in the top 5 or and beyond. But just froze up, couldn't move. But it took years. Of trying to surf that wave again. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't. That's why I say it's like, was I a changed man? I don't know. Did I go and try and do the same things that I used to do? Yeah, I tried to surf pipe again. I tried to but I wasn't the same. I was different. So,
and the decision, you had your last event at Bells, which was just a triumph for you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
To step away, athletes talk about how hard it is to retire.
Mm-hmm.
But when it's probably earlier than they were hoping, expecting, or dreaming, I presume it's even harder. Was it a relief? Was it a difficult decision to make? Was it the only decision you could make? Like from the outside looking, it's the only decision you could make for your health and your wife and your children.
Yeah.
But I imagine when that is such a part of your being that it's not the easiest thing to do.
I tossed it around for 6 months.
Did you?
Yeah. It was like, I didn't want to make the phone call. I had to call RipCurl. I was like, this is not what I even want to do. I don't even want to have this conversation. I've had the conversation a number of times.
To be fair, RipCurl are probably hoping to get that call from you
Yeah,
because of their love for you. They're probably waiting for the call for you to say, I'm done here.
yeah. And I think like, the guys in RipCurl and, they probably knew, a lot of, I think my teammates knew, I think my family knew, I think everyone else knew, but me, that it was like, it was time, you know, they'd seen what I'd gone through just to stay at that level for that long, after an accident like that. And, many more things that unfolded in it.
But prior to making that decision, surfing was at the Olympics for the first time.
Yeah, yeah.
The delayed Olympics.
Yeah.
And you're a man that wasn't going to make the team, made the team,
Yeah.
won Australia's first ever medal in surfing.
I was such an outside shot, man.
Yeah.
Like it didn't even look like I was going to make the team. And then, I made the team in the top spot, mind you. And I did that through overcoming my fear at Chopu in a huge waves. I put on a helmet for the first time. So there's like those parts in life where you kind of like, maybe I didn't learn, but maybe I did. I started to learn ways around fear that didn't have to be head on to fear, but I could actually put on some safety equipment or pick the eyes out of it or learn different way. My relationship with fear was different to what I'd learned as a child. Now I was starting to evolve into a different form. And so evolving that relationship with fear of like, okay, well, you can listen to it sometimes and maybe you don't have to go that wave because you are scared. Maybe for good reason.
That's not defeat.
That's not defeat. That's not a loss. You don't have to conquer that every time. So I was learning this new way and it brought me to a win, which qualified me for the Olympics. And then, coming to the Olympics, it was like, okay, it's in Japan. I'm 6'3" and it's going to be tiny. So I was kind of like a bit of a same thing where the fear came up and was like, I'm representing my country. I'm not the best person for the job here. Like, I'm clearly not an air guy anymore. I don't have the ability to spin and like I used to without getting unstuck, and then without being a bit dizzy and like things like that. So with my new way of looking at fear, was I started to, all right, I'm scared of not representing my country well. What do I need to do here? So I just started to train in small waves. Like all the time, we just did session after session in tiny waves, bad waves. I tried to I brought myself back into the space where I need to get really good at spinning again. I don't think it particularly worked, to be honest, but
there's a medal to say it did.
Yeah, there is a medal to say it did. So, but yeah, we get to the Olympics and then we have this crazy typhoon swell, which is like just that little reprieve that I needed from Mother Nature to just the waves popped up, just that enough to all the training I'd done and things synced up and and I walked away with this medal, man, and I'd been visualizing it for years because of the delay as well.
Yeah.
Right? And I'd just been I'm going to walk away with the medal. And that was what everything in my head was thinking, and I've experienced things like winning my first event back. So at this stage, I kind of was like, don't count yourself out. I'd experienced something where it's not supposed to happen. So had a bit of a dream that just I kept dreaming every day.
What did it mean to you?
Mate, that to me...
that's as mainstream as surfing has ever been.
Yeah.
Because now it's a wider sport audience. They don't have to be watching J-Bay and Pipe and Bells. They're watching the Olympics and they want to watch because they haven't seen surfing before. And then there's this big, tall Aussie dude with a medal around his neck.
Yeah. To me, it was the pinnacle of my career. I had lots of great moments, but for everything that was going on in my life and around that and my whole career, I felt like I'd led to that moment. I would have loved to have walked away with the gold, but that bronze medal felt like rose gold, man. It felt incredible to me. It felt like it felt like the moment where I was like, well done, and uh, the challenges and everything like that. It really did feel like a moment where my shoulders relaxed a little bit and went, yeah, well done, mate. Like a real instance of pride and being, proud to represent how I represented my country, my family, like my wife and the kids. And yeah, it became this thing that wasn't just like a world title. It was like, I can tell my kids I won an Olympic medal.
The book is called Against the Water. The author is Owen Wright. Mick Fanning, as I said, described it as the all-time sporting comeback. There is so much more in this book than you've heard in this podcast, which is why you need to go and buy it, read it, share it with other people, make it one of those books that's dog-eared in the bookshelf. I think it'd be fantastic, mate. As you know, I've been trying to get some time with you for quite some time, and through it, I didn't realise that you were going through potential retirement. You're still surfing when we started to try and tee it up. I said to you the book blew me away, but the conversation has blown me away even further. I know you had some reservations about an in-depth description. I thought you handled it phenomenally well. And when it's all said and done, you are the first ever Australian to win an Olympic medal in surfing, which is absolutely brilliant, mate. Good luck to you, your beautiful wife, your kids. And people are going to be blown away by the book. Thanks for coming on the show and being really vulnerable and open and honest. It's a ripping episode, and it's one that this whole show aims to try and do, and you've absolutely nailed it. So thank you, mate.
Thanks so much for having me on and giving me the opportunity to share. And I hope people get a lot out of it. And yeah, thanks.